Hello, world singers. My name is Tyler.
And my name is Brooke.
And this is Cosmere Conversations. Brooke, we are here with our round 2 of round 1 breakdown, and then round 2 introductions for the Cosmere cage match.
Woohoo!
Very exciting. Really appreciate all the participation that we had from the fans on the Reddit and the Facebook.
This has been such a fun week.
It really has, because the numbers were like astounding to me how many people were participating. So really appreciate everyone who gave comments and voted using the Google Forms. We will have a continual cage match round each week for the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out. Right now, we are going to discuss and declare the winners for round 1.
Let's dive in.
Excellent. No more hesitation. Let's do this. Cosmere cage match round 1.
Ding ding.
Matchup 1. Kelsier, the OG Mistborn versus Lightsong, the Warbreaker God. Thoughts, Brooke?
Well, I think I said that Kelsier would win, considering how Lightsong is not much of a combatant, and Kelsier definitely is.
We were thinking that, against relative normies, Lightsong could actually put up some...
For sure, yeah.
Maybe.
Barring anything else, he could just fall on top of them and,
he's very large.
Big.
And, increased strength. However, one of the fan comments that was left said, quote, Kelsier's ruthlessness and experience using his power for combat is a big advantage. He's faced physically stronger opponents before, and Lightsong's inexperience in battle will spell the Warbreaker God's doom. End quote.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that just Kelsier's personality, his innate personality of that ruthlessness, is really what gives him an advantage.
What is the only...
Lightsong is so nice.
That Lightsong is just too nice. He literally sacrificed
hey man,
himself.
How's it going? Stab, dead.
Just blown apart by coins. Just... I suppose the only no, there's no interesting questions. I was going to try to make it sound better than it is.
I really did like one person's comment though. Kelsier is a skilled Mistborn. Lightsong, while a god, is a skilled layabout.
What is Lightsong going to do other than whine Kelsier to death? He might drink Kelsier under the table, but he's certainly not going to win in a battle of combatants.
So bye-bye Lightsong. Kelsier wins this round.
Moving on to our second matchup, we have 2 people from Scadrial, Vin and Tensoon, who technically have fought before. I think this was our only matchup where technically they had fought before.
Yeah, and remember, this is random. We didn't pick these.
We did not in any way pick these. It's just totally random. But we have Mistborn versus Faceless Immortal.
True.
What are your thoughts on this one?
This one to me was interesting because most people's justification for their answer was something that I did not factor in when I was thinking about it.
You went straight combatant, didn't you?
Yeah,
I went maybe he'll turn into a gigantic wolfhound thing.
Yeah, I definitely saw Tensoon as the wolfhound because I feel like that's when he is the strongest as a combatant. But I was really imagining this as a Super Smash Bros. Fight. They both have their skills, they appear, they fight. I was not really taking into account any kind of knowledge that they learn because I felt like that was a separate thing. So most people said that Vin would win because she knows the Condorus secret, which
she discovers in, I think, Well of Ascension. The second book.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, we know that through a extra boost of emotional allomancy through Duralumin, that the Chondra, or really any hemalurgic thing, can be controlled by a full Mistborn. So most of the people gave Vin an overwhelming victory in this matchup. But I really like this idea of using emotional allomancy because it means that even though Tensoon doesn't like it, and I'm sure it's painful mentally or cognitively, nobody has to die in this fight. Nobody has to get hurt. Vin is literally just going to emotionally blast Tensoon and overwhelm him, and then he will become
I mean, I guess theoretically, right, Vin wouldn't even have to do that. She could just like soothe him enough to where he was like, meh, I don't feel like fighting. And then she would win.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the only caveat there is that Tensoon is like a master of understanding when he's probably being manipulated.
Sure.
So I would say maybe a normal soothing wouldn't work on him, and you would need that extra boost. But as a Mistborn, Vin is one of only 2 people in this bracket that has the power to emotionally burst down Tensoon, and I think that is going to give her the win.
For sure.
In no combat in this actual fight. It's perfect. It's the best type of fight.
Next we have Eshenai versus Vavena, and this was a really good fight. We had almost equal numbers on this one.
I think this one and maybe one other were where it came down to basically a 50-50 split. The voting was very, very close, literally decided by just a couple of votes. So Eshenai, I put her in war form with shard blade and shard plate, somewhere around like end of Way of Kings before she goes all storm form.
Yeah, that's how I had her as well.
And then Vavena, most people and myself put her not in Warbreaker, but as Azure in Oathbringer, where she has what we'll call Nightblood 2.0 and some type of scarf, cloak.
Yeah, I think it's a cloak.
She wears it as a cloak and
wraps around her arm.
Exactly. Puts it around her arm in combat situations.
She's kind of like the Winter Soldier.
There it is. I love it. Yeah, she's the she's the cloaked soldier. I think this fight was most interesting because we have a very, very skilled combatant in Eshenai. Lots of war experience, lots of dueling experience.
And the Parshendi are just physically very strong. Yeah. They're a little bit bigger than humans.
The
a little bit.
skill.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that where it gets very interesting is Vavena in Oathbringer is definitely a very knowledgeable and experienced individual with both fighting, where, she runs through the most we saw about her fighting skills were really like on the defense of the wall at Kholinar, where she did not kill, but held off a couple of fused as well as other attackers. I think that the scarf around her arm is also a cue that she is very, very good with awakening and might use that as like a last ditch effort if like people were watching. But in this type of fight, she could use it pretty offensively.
And at this point, I would assume that Vavena's been around for a while, so
yeah, more than maybe a single lifetime.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I
possibly.
think like her skill is probably pretty high with both fighting, considering she knows Vasher, and awakening, again considering she knows Vasher.
I think there's a lot of interesting things that could be done with awakening. For example, like I imagined her Nightblood 2.0 with her awakened scarf, and she like throws that scarf out to try to trip up Eshenai or something, like on the fighting grounds. You throw out the scarf and give it a command of like trip whoever steps on you or something, and then you just try to fight around, and the scarf actually becomes like another tactic or another thing that Eshenai has to worry about.
And my only question with that is we don't know. Well, we know that shard plate makes you protected from investiture, or basically, at least like,
investiture
surges on Rashar.
Investiture.
Yeah. So then, like, would that work? I'm not sure. Would the command be effective on someone that's kind of like cloaked in investiture? Or does that kind of make them invisible to the command?
That's interesting, but I think that we've seen, for example, like commands be used against people with high level breaths on Warbreaker.
That's true.
So I don't think that there's a command that could be given for Vavena to awaken or somehow use Eshenai's shard plate itself or the shard blade. Like, I don't think she could awaken those objects, but I do think that she could use her cloak to like trip up Eshenai theoretically. However, once she did, it's just a cloak. Like, Eshenai is going to swipe through that with her shard blade.
Right.
And Vavena has a huge problem in terms of both endurance and durability because Eshenai has plate.
Yeah.
I think this is the separating factor.
Even though it would be a good fight, there's just no way that Azure can win without the protective capabilities of shard plate.
Yeah, I think that in a straight, like, no plate battle, and maybe no awakening, just straight swords, I would maybe give it to Vavena.
Sure.
She could theoretically be a better sword dancer or duelist than Eshenai. But with the plate, I think it just becomes too overwhelming. I don't know what Vavena's real defense is going to be
exactly
against a fully enraged Eshenai charging at her. Like, that's a lot to deal with. And you're going to throw a cloak at her, like, she'll get through that.
At some point, you're going to get sliced.
Yeah. So this round, I give it to Eshenai. We move on to the next one.
Next up, we have another really good, really close fight with Lift and Shalon.
This fight was super interesting because there's a lot of different levels to the fight. And a lot of different people who were commenting and kind of giving us different versions of the fight. I loved this comment from one of our listeners. Quote, Lift simply doesn't have the focus or training at the current moment to defeat a multi-projecting Shalon with or without her plate. In the future, however, ... And this is one of the points that I think is most important to make. What we said is that the fight takes place as the characters are best in the books that we've seen so far. I think a fully radiant or fifth ideal radiant Lift is probably going to be one of the most difficult combatants in the Cosmere.
Yeah, for sure. Because we already know Lift is a game breaker. She can conceivably beat anyone.
Like, and the Edge Dancer order was renowned for fighting as part of the Knights Radiant history. So I think that in the future, Lift might easily take this, but right now...
But as she is currently... we see her in Oathbringer. She can't even stand up while edge dancing,
paddling along, and it's remarked many times how she doesn't like it. She wants to move past it, but she doesn't know the next surge well enough, or she doesn't know the ideals well enough.
She just she is a child, and she is a child in her knowledge of her surges as well.
There were a couple of comments that strongly favored Lift, though. She said, quote, I think Lift is aggressive enough to outmatch Shalon's wits. Shalon has not yet displayed an ability to effectively soulcast, so it pretty much becomes a fight using their spren weapons. Lift's ability to change friction has more combat potential than Shalon's illusions.
I do think Lift would be able to see through Shalon's illusions.
Ooh, tell me why.
Just because of what we've seen of her partially existing in the cognitive realm, and being able to pop up in dreams. Obviously she has some kind of connection to the cognitive realm. So I think she would be able to identify those illusions versus reality. So I think that's one advantage she would have. But like this person says, it would probably be a battle of weapons, and we all know Wendell doesn't like to hurt things, so she's got that against her.
That is one of the hardest things to understand, is that right now, Lift is not a killer. Lift has never, as we know, Lift has never hurt anybody.
She's great at evading, but she's not aggressive.
And she has the surge of regrowth as well, so she is a powerful healer. But I think that we're going to see, in this fight, this is kind of how I would imagine it going. You're going to see Shalon throw out multiple projections. You think Lift might have some game breaker way of kind of seeing through those projections. But I think in any type of fight, you're relying on one young girl who, let's not forget that being small is a disadvantage in a fight. if you have shorter reach, then that's gonna lead to more difficult things. I think that there's gonna be a lot of evasion, a lot of duplicity. I think that it's possible that Lift could like land some hits on Shalon, but the thing that I want to point out that one of our fans pointed out is, quote, fourth ideal motherfuckers, end quote. Shalon, as far as we know, is one of the only Radiants to reach the fourth ideal. This is still soft speculation, but the fan comment here kind of makes me lean towards Shalon having more experience with combat, having more experience with killing people, and because she might have manifested that shard armor at the end of Oathbringer, that fourth ideal, I just go, Lift is at the third ideal, Shalon's at the fourth.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think this one does go to Shalon. I would love to read a couple of the other comments that we got, though, just to kind of highlight how close this battle is and the things that sort of work in each of their favor. One person said that Lift, even without food, she could eat her own finger and turn it into Stormlight and then regrow her finger later when light is available.
I wonder if that's a type of like perpetual motion machine type of thing where like you can't do it. You can't. So she's going to eat food from her own finger. I don't think there would be enough Stormlight just from that finger to then regrow her finger.
Maybe.
Or you would have a perpetual motion machine where she could just keep eating her finger and keep producing Stormlight.
I just thought that was a funny comment.
Of course, it's hilarious.
And then later on, there was another person who said that Shalon has the advantage because she doesn't need to stop for a snack if she gets stabbed.
We didn't want to make energy consumption be the main determining factor of any of these fights, but it is probably important to mention that even if Lift went to a fight fully stuffed, fully stormlighted, and Shalon does as well, I think Lift, because of her metabolism, is going to burn through Stormlight at a higher rate than Shalon would. Mm-hmm. Almost like a honor blade wielder.
Yeah.
Like she
good call.
Has kind of that thing going on where she's getting Stormlight from a different way, and it may not be as efficient as the quote-unquote traditional way.
Right. And then I thought another super interesting and intelligent argument against Shalon was that one person said, quote, I honestly think Shalon's borderline personality disorder would be a major detriment to a direct scuffle with almost anyone. In a fight against capable opponents, you have to know who you are. Hesitation leads to death. Lift has a certain unspoiled confidence that leads her to the spontaneity required to adapt and overcome in battle. End quote.
I really like that argument.
Yeah.
It's both psychological as well as pointing out like the physical requirements of battle. Like the thing that I could imagine is, as I said before, Shalon's throwing out a bunch of projections, charging Lift, going after her, maybe coming up in shard armor, but like Lift would be dodging, evading, skating around, falling on her butt occasionally, getting some snacks, and then like wielding her way through a bunch of projections until she like stabs Shalon in the armpit or something, and then like says sorry and runs away. Like I could imagine a fight kind of going that route where Lift gets like one stab in that like does the deed and then like runs away real fast.
A little Achilles heel slice.
Basically.
But I think even in this comment, it says a fight against capable opponents. And I just don't know that Lift is a capable opponent.
I would probably agree with that statement. What we've seen right now from Lift doesn't give her enough combat feats, whereas I think everybody knows that eventually she will be an incredibly powerful combatant. But I don't know if she's there yet.
So, fight goes to Shalon.
Shalon, our Knight Radiant.
Next up, we have Wax versus Adeline. And this one was another hotly contested and argued fight.
There were arguments on both sides that are remarkably convincing. Starting, it kind of depends on the limits you yourself selected for the kind of rules of this fight. For example, one comment said, Wax has no way to pierce Shardplate, and Adeline is a trained duelist, maybe one of the best in the Cosmere. Now, if you think that bullets from Wax's guns cannot ever pierce Shardplate, I would probably side heavily with Adeline. But what Brooke and I were discussing is that while a single normal bullet from a gun probably cannot pierce through Shardplate, multiple bullets fired at the same piece of Shardplate probably could either crack or shatter like a Vambaran.
I was thinking about it, I mean, kind of the same as when they duel other people with shard blades, is that a bullet wouldn't be able to get through, but it would probably make a little crack in the armor. And then, like you said, if you continue to hit that same place a couple times, you could potentially shatter or kill that piece of armor.
And that is what I think. I think that a normal, 6 rounds from a revolver could probably shatter and lead to then a penetration from a follow-up bullet. Wax going into his fight in Bands of Mourning, not when he actually has the bands, but the big fight before that, he definitely has multiple guns with multiple bullets to reload, enough ammunition to reload a couple times. He has a shotgun, and he has his grappling hook and multiple vials. What I think is most important to remember here, though, is not just the weapon, but the twin-born ability that Wax uses all the time, where he increases his own weight, fires, and then pushes the bullet to be faster than it normally is, so it's like a hyper push or a hyper bullet. And I think if we are gonna say 6 bullets can shatter a single piece of Shardplate, then a hyper pushed bullet could also probably do a lot of damage. Maybe not once and just pierce it, but certainly a couple of times. And I think this is the strategy that Wax uses. He stays at a distance, using either flying, steel pushing. He can go light and theoretically be much more mobile than Adeline, even Adeline in plate. And he fires bullets, eventually finding one spot that's going to be weak. He may not even be... I think he's a talented marksman, but he might just be firing randomly and being like, okay, it's your right shoulder that took the most damage from that. Now I'm going to try to hyper push a bullet and shatter that piece. I think that's Wax's strategy for dealing with Adeline. What do you think about Adeline as kind of the duelist in this, though?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adeline is such a strong fighter, and for me, what came to mind was that duel that he's in. I think it's in Words of Radiance.
Yeah.
Where he's fighting 3 or 4 people at once. And most of his Shardplate dies. I think he's dragging around one leg or something. But he ends up winning that fight. And so I just think, first of all, his dueling prowess that we know, combined with his ability to continue on and continue to fight effectively, even with 3/4 of his Shardplate broken. Even if Wax did get a lot of great hits in and shatter pieces of his armor, I just think Adeline's going to be able to go the distance.
And we can all start singing the song from Hercules now.
I'm on my way.
I can go the distance. No, we don't need to do that. No more singing. We need to kind of figure this out, because I will say this is the one that Brooke and I were on the most opposite sides from. And I thought Wax, you thought Adeline. I think that the argument just that Adeline is the best duelist that we have ever seen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really think Adeline might be the best combatant in the Cosmere.
And I would agree that putting Adeline up against almost anyone, and maybe the full Mistborns are going to give him a challenge, but against anyone in the Risharian universe, he's going to be right up there as one of the winning combatants. I think that where it breaks for me is that Wax is shown to be very resourceful, very imaginative, and very creative in the ways that he utilizes his twin-born powers. For example, I don't necessarily... Okay, say you take out... Wax was able to do what we were talking about, fire a bunch of times and maybe take out a leg or an arm of Adeline's. I don't know how Adeline is going to be able to necessarily respond if Wax does something like fly up into the air and then drop on Adeline with all of his weight, like his stacked weight. Adeline has increased strength with shard plate, but it definitely has a limit. And Wax would theoretically be able to just dump hundreds of pounds on Adeline.
I don't think Wax would do that because then he would be within arm's reach of a shard blade. And
I think it would be like the last
If he
move.
even gets nicked with the shard blade, like...
He has no healing. Yeah,
he's... Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, I definitely think he keeps his distance. I'm saying like as a final killing blow, when Adeline is slowed down a bunch, that's when I could imagine Wax just dropping all his weight on him. And if you could like... Theoretically, we've seen Adeline drop his blade plenty of times in fights because he gets knocked down or something like that. So if you could theoretically maybe trip up Adeline with a grappling hook and leading to getting him on the ground, and then Wax just gets on top of him, like I don't know anything that Adeline could do in that close of quarters.
Yeah, I mean, I think the grappling hook would probably be the most effective way to go. But I think then that's where I get to my sticking point, which is that I was not imagining Wax with like every possible weapon in the world. So I think that's where he gets a little bit OP, is if we're going to let him have like 1,000 guns and 1,000,000 bullets and his grappling hook and his
just the normal stuff
power
that he comes to the regular fights with.
Yeah,
I
think that's not... We should have probably either specified or just excluded him, because I think that's just too much to put in a cage match like this.
There's another thing that we could talk about as well, which is aluminum bullets. We really have no idea how those would interact with shard plate or with a person for like a Knight's Radiant with just normal healing ability. Can an aluminum bullet be healed if it's shot into a Kaladin or a Dalinar with their radiant healing? I really don't know that answer. So while we were on opposite sides of this matchup, the fans did decide and give the victory to Wax. I think mobility winning out against strength and skill.
And as a lot of people noted, he brings a gun to a knife fight.
Exactly. Well, he brings a gun to a shard fight.
Fair enough.
We'll see if that keeps helping him out in the long run. One of the things that I just wanted to mention is that there was, in the Google Forms, you guys put responses in, and in the responses I'm reading through, there's dozens and dozens of responses. I'm going through one at a time, and I see a couple of fan responses that are obviously a person injecting their own personality. They're providing some of their own commentary and thoughts when I'm just like, oh, I recognize you. You're not just throwing out, I think this person will win. You're given a little
personality, a little spice.
Exactly.
Really standing out from the crowd.
And I noticed that, for example, in our previous fight, Lift versus Shalon, the comment that stood out to me was, quote, "I believe in my girl," end quote. And I was like, all right, that's fair. I respect that. But both of the characters are girls. So I technically didn't know who this person was supporting.
Who are you getting behind?
Who's your girl?
Hard? Yeah.
Is it Lift or is it Shalon? It could go either way. Until I get to this fight with Wax versus Adeline. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm scrolling through all the responses, just looking, blah, blah, blah. And then a single comment of, "I also believe in my boy," jumped out at me. And I was like, oh, I get it. You are a Adeline Shalon supporter. What's their push together name? What do we call them? Shadalin.
Or Adeline?
No, Shadalin is definitely better. So we have a Shadalin lover out there who believes both in Shalon,
her girl,
and
and her boy.
Exactly. We appreciate all the comments is basically what I'm saying. And I read them all, even if we didn't talk about them all.
Truth. Next up, Kenton versus Renarin.
I thought this fight was incredibly interesting from a setup perspective, and many of our fans did as well. I will also say that many fans did not know who Kenton is, so if you did not listen to our last podcast or our White Sand Reviewed, episode number 19, Kenton is from the planet Taldane. He is a Sand Master and is the star of the White Sand graphic novels.
Yeah, they are real quick reads. I would recommend them. I am not a graphic novel person at all. I was very skeptical, but I enjoyed them. So if you are like me and you're kind of like, I don't know about this, just give them a shot.
And if you do, you will be able to better comment on the fight between Kenton and Renarin. So this turned out to be one of the closest fights for the fan voting. And I think that's good because there's a lot of interesting stuff in this fight.
I thought this one was interesting based on the personality matchup.
Sure.
Because I feel like these two people are some of the most maybe like insecure or unsure characters. We see a lot of Renarin sort of embodying that, but I think Kenton as well sort of never really found his place. They're both, these sons who are not favored of their fathers, don't have all of the power and skill that their fathers wish they have. So I thought that was just an interesting sort of like mental, psychological perspective for both of them to bring into a fight. Because it's not like one of them is just going to, smash and destroy. They're both going to kind of be like, can I do this?
What I think was most interesting about this fight is the kind of clear clash between skill set. Kenton is a trained sword fighter and sand master, which is a magic system that is pretty combat oriented. Renarin is distinctly not a combat guy in the Stormlight books, who has a purpose that sometimes has it's like a cross purpose. He's not really sure what's going on, like you were mentioning before. But he has an incredible ability to heal, one of the most powerful healing abilities that we've seen on display across the entire Cosmere. And from my perspective, Renarin would have his Spren Blade, but not be in Shard Plate because he would be highly utilizing his healing in this fight. My thought for this fight is that Renarin, not good at much of anything, just walks towards Kenton, who is going to throw out a bunch of shit at him, bunch of sand things, hitting him in the face, trying to drain his water away. I don't know what's going on, but Kenton's going to try to overwhelm him with aggression, and Renarin is just going to take all the pain, heal himself instantaneously, and then stab Kenton in the chest with his shard blade.
Okay.
That's my version of the fight.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely. I think for this particular fight, Renarin would want to have his shard plate.
Interesting.
Because I think it would protect him from...
sand.
Exactly, yeah. Like, if it was someone else, like, okay, maybe you do discard the plate in favor of your surge abilities, but I think for this particular one, he would want that protection because that would enable him to kind of like move through that sandstorm and then, like you said, get close enough, slice Kenton. I don't think Kenton is quite as skilled as you were portraying him to be, because I think the name for it is Sand Mastery, but I don't think he's a complete master of Sand Mastery.
I respect that. I would also say that I think this is a little problem with White Sand, is that they tell us that Kenton is incredibly ingenuitive and creative with his use of Sand Mastery, but they don't actually show it a whole bunch.
True.
So I was kind of going with, they told us he was very good as a combatant.
Yeah, but they also told us that he didn't have a very high level of power. Until very recently.
Yeah, at the beginning.
But even recently, I think he only has like 12 ribbons of sand versus like dozens and dozens of actual masters of Sand Mastery.
I think that Kenton is unfortunately going to have no real defensive capabilities against Renarin's Shard Blade. I wouldn't put him in the plate, but even if you put him in the plate, I don't know how Kenton fights off the Shard Blade once Renarin closed distances. So the only way I could see Kenton winning is if theoretically his Sand Mastery was able to hurt Renarin so bad that it drained all of his Stormlight to the point he couldn't heal, and then Kenton with the sword could maybe defeat Renarin, even though Renarin has a Shard Blade.
Yeah, I think there's too many arguments against that, though. Because I think here, too, is another place where we get into questions about investiture. Because if the sand itself is invested, does wearing Shard Plate, again, make you invisible to that investiture, or somehow, like, protected from it, you know?
I do understand what you're saying, and that is one of the problem with the crossover fights, is you're kind of discussing how different types of investiture would work, and we're not 100% certain. Just from my perspective, I feel like you would be able to throw sand up against the Shard Plate, and it would have the normal impact that sand against any object would. But
like it could corrode it, kind of? That's interesting.
Over a very long period of time.
Well, if you have a lot of sand.
Extra long period of time. I really don't think that Sand Mastery has been shown to have any type of debilitating move that I would really be afraid of if I was Renarin. The one I was kind of thinking of, okay, what if Kenton, in your situation, Renarin has plate. Kenton throws up sand into Renarin's plate and then like manipulates the sand to like jab Renarin's eyes.
That'd be interesting.
But I have never seen that specific of use. It's more like a blast of sand hits people or knocks them over or something.
Right.
It's not so much control of like individual sand particles.
Grains, yeah. Or at least if it's possible, Kenton's not there yet. But I think regardless of anything else, I really like this comment from one person, which is, quote, "I have to give this one to Renarin, seeing as he got squished flat in Oathbringer and didn't die," end quote.
It's hard to...
Fair. You can't really argue with that.
Yeah, it's really hard to argue with that. The
literally got pancaked.
Smashed to a pancake.
And then just pops up like a cartoon.
Yeah, literally like Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah,
like gets smushed by a boulder and then just like has a moment when he's flat as a pancake and then...
peels himself up.
Exactly. And then pops back into existence.
Yeah.
And I for me, that is really the deciding factor, is I don't think Kenton can throw out enough offense to hurt Renarin.
Yep, and that's why this one is going to go to Renarin.
It's what the fans say. It's what we say. Well done, Renarin. By basically not being a fighter, you win.
You win.
Our next one is a heartbreaking matchup, as well as one of our fans' favorite matchups. This is Kaladin versus Zazed, or Zazed, however you want to say it. I believe the appropriate way to say it is Zazed, but I will still say Zazed, as always. Brooke, Kaladin, the Windrunner, third ideal, getting real close to the fourth, but third ideal. Zazed, I said he was strongest at the end of Well of Ascension in the battle over the city, when he has all of his metal mines and he is completely ready and willing to use all of those metal mines. Incredibly complex fight. A Feruchemist versus a Windrunner. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another one where there's a lot of good points in each of their favor. I was kind of thinking, I think I did say Kaladin just because I feel like it's hard to fight against someone who can fly. But then I was thinking, if Zazed can like increase his size and just kind of grab Kaladin out of the sky, or at least like bat him down or something like that, then that could be a better fight.
See, what I think is interesting about the fight that we saw with Zazed is that, and just the way that Feruchemi works in general, is that Zazed has a full metal mine that he can tap at whatever speed he wants. He can take the entire metal mine and drain it instantaneously, or he can slow burn it over a long period of time. In the fight we saw, Zazed was heavily motivated to maintain a incredibly powerful position, but over a long period of time, because he was defending the wall from multiple invaders. It wasn't just one person he was trying to kill. So your idea of him, for example, increasing his size, his strength, his speed to a maybe rate that Kaladin cannot keep up with, like, even though Kaladin's cool, a speed metal mind is very, very difficult to deal with, especially Zazed saved it up over years and then is trying to burst. He could, theoretically, burst it all at once and become way faster than anyone could deal with. So I think there's the possibility that Zazed wins this. The problem that I see, you mentioned mobility and flight. Obviously, you don't want to be in the air against Kaladin Stormblessed. I see the biggest problem, though, being that Sill Blade or the Sill Spear, because Zazed is basically reliant on getting into hand-to-hand combat, and Kaladin will never rely on hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Even if he gets close and he is physically taking blows from Zazed, I don't think he'd be able to last long from those blows, but I also think he would just make like a Sill dagger and then stab Zazed a bunch of times when they're close together.
Totally.
So it's
Zazed, he has a lot of cool capabilities, but he doesn't have a ton of like aggressive capabilities because he doesn't have weapons. He's not really a fighter, and he doesn't have very many defensive capabilities because he doesn't have armor or anything like that. Yeah, he's relying on his gold mines to heal him from blows, and I think that would work for like. But Kaladin is also going to keep his distance, so he's going to like fly around Zazed. And Kaladin can heal too. Yeah, exactly. So
I think that
they're pretty evenly matched.
It's a very even fight. It's a fun fight. Here's what one of our fans said, quote, "Honestly, in a one-on-one straight-up fight, I'm having trouble thinking of someone who could overpower Zazed for the first couple of minutes while he's burning through all the stored potential in his metal mines. If there's no follow-up opponent, nothing is stopping him from just using everything right away." End quote. That's a fair point. Yeah, it's like a fair point. In the first couple of minutes, Zazed is insanely dangerous, but Kaladin is gonna keep his distance until he is aware of what he's able to do. I think turning Sill into like that 12-foot long halberd spear that he talked about once when he was fighting the Fused, and, you know, just flying in, taking a couple of stabs at Zazed, basically wearing down his healing until you can try to overwhelm him with a more aggressive fight with the Shard Blade. What I think it comes down to basically is that Kaladin is able to deal more damage while also staying mobile and defensive from Zazed, who is going to be primarily relying on his physical strength to like catch Kaladin and then like break him some way.
And I think Zazed would put up a good fight, but I think Kaladin has workarounds for everything that Zazed could do.
This fight, according to the fans, according to us, goes to Kaladin Stormblessed. And our last battle.
Oh, our final fight, and maybe the most difficult.
It is an emotionally difficult fight, a difficult fight in the story. Dalinar versus Yasna.
Yeah, and this one I think was difficult for so many reasons. They both are so strong. They're incredibly strong characters. And I think just the nature of Yasna's power raises a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt, and I still kind of feel like this battle realistically would end in a stalemate, but we had to pick a winner.
Because one of the things that a lot of the fans were bringing to the table, many of the comments, basically were imagining the fight happening as Yasna was in the Battle of Thaylen City at the end of Oathbringer, where she was snapping her fingers, waving her hands, and making Fused puff into smoke, or lighting them on fire, building the entire Thaylen wall.
But I think that we forgot in that's not Yasna's like normal power level. That's her when she has access to the spiritual realm due to the three realms being either combined or very, very close together. So that's not like a normal ability that she can bring to this fight.
Yeah, she says two things specifically that I just want to remind people of. One is that the soul casting relies on a connection to the cognitive realm, and in Thaylen City, the cognitive realm is literally as close as it ever is to the physical realm. Like she is...
Yeah, she makes specific comments like, oh, this is so easy right now because all the realms have been brought close together. But that's not what she normally can do. Yeah. And since that is sort of a god power, like ex machina sort of circumstance, we will not include that particular skill in this fight.
For me, though, even her main ability, which is soul casting, her other surge is else calling, but her main ability, the ability she's best at, is soul casting. And soul casting in this fight, from my perspective, will not work very well against Dalinar the Blackthorn. I imagine Dalinar as a combatant, he is best, in my view, when he is the Blackthorn with full blade and plate. Not as a Knight Radiant, even though he has the healing ability, because the Blackthorn is both so motivated, so young and fit, and so powerful as a pure combatant. We know that investiture resists other investiture. In my opinion, there would be no way that Yasna could soulcast Dalinar, even in the best of circumstances, when he's wearing plate. You can't soulcast someone in shard plate.
She would probably end up soulcasting other things, like either creating barriers between herself and Dalinar, or like tripping him, blockading him in some way.
We saw the move where she turns air into oil and then brings a spark to it.
Yep.
So I imagined a fight going where Dalinar gets covered in oil and is on fire, and he's literally a flaming Blackthorn.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want that coming at you.
But like, can he reach you before he cooks inside of his own suit?
And that's it. That's basically like the question is like, does Yasna have enough tricks to bring to the table before Dalinar closes the distance?
Yeah.
The problem I see, again, this is a little bit hard because we haven't seen Yasna manifest plate. We think she got close in the Battle of Thaylen City with little geometric spheres coming up around her. But Dalinar in full plate is just going to rush Yasna, and I don't know how she fights him off if he can close the distance.
Yeah, but this is why I think it ends in a stalemate, because I think, okay, he rushes her, she else calls.
Exactly. The ultimate, and we haven't seen her do this yet, but I assume that she might be able to pull like a Nightcrawler move where she else calls someone else. So like Dalinar runs towards her, and then she's just like, bye Dalinar, and he gets
taken
zapped
into
off.
The cognitive realm.
Exactly. We haven't seen her do that, but we know that she herself can else call through the cognitive realm.
Yeah, so that was my sort of imagination, was that she would probably end up else calling, and then like, okay, fight's called, and I don't think she would have the ability to be able to like else call back and attack him at like a more vulnerable point. Yeah. So she would be able to escape always, but then I think she kind of forfeits the match.
And that is generally what I think as well, is Yasna would basically be relying on defenses or trickery or eventually else calling, which we would call a forfeit, against Dalinar's just unrelenting physical assault. If there's ever an instance where Dalinar closes the distance, where he can hit her with the shard blade, there's nothing Yasna can do against Dalinar with it. Like, her Spren blade is not in any way going to help her because she has no combat skills whatsoever.
I mean, I think she does have combat skills, but definitely not at the Blackthorn level.
Yeah. She might have training that is like at the level of Shalon, where she's like practiced with a sword and kind of like her upbringing and just the, the daughter of kings and stuff like that. She probably has
Yasna's a badass. Like, she's definitely trained herself.
I just don't think that there is really anything that can help her if Dalinar is able to close the distance.
For sure. I did think it was interesting. One person commented that Dalinar would only win if he lost his memory. sort of referencing like more of his personality and the relationship between them. And I thought that was an interesting like perspective to take. Like if they were forced to fight in the books, he would probably just like sacrifice himself and would not be able to bring himself to kill Yasna. I don't think that necessarily comes into play in this Super Smash Bros, but it was just something that I hadn't thought about that I was like, oh, dang. Yeah. Aw.
Yeah. I mean, in the books, we saw Yasna fail to kill a family member in Renarin. So if the characters were completely in character, I don't think many of these fights would be happening. Maybe we would see...
Okay, like if Dalinar was the Blackthorn and was possessed by the Thrill, Yasna would kill him. Definitely.
Why?
Because he would be possessed and a danger and a threat. So she would...
other people. Oh, you're saying she would be willing to fight him in character.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand. I don't think she would be able to kill him for the same reasons if he was the Blackthorn possessed.
I'm just saying.
I understand what you're saying is like she would make the right decision if it was necessary because that's her character.
Yeah.
However, in this fight, we and the fans are giving this to Dalinar the Blackthorn.
So hard to say goodbye to Yasna.
All of these fights were incredible, and the comments were a whole bunch of fun. Really liked them a lot. So let's talk about each of the round 2 fights.
Round 2?
Yes, there's going to be 8 fights again, just like there was for round 1. And we've given you the winners, but let's go over them real quick with the new matchups for round 2. Brooke, start us off.
Kelsier versus Vin. Sad face.
Battle of the Mistborn. That is going to be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah.
Who is better? Pure power, anger, sociopathic rage from Kelsier, or talented, mobile, finesse, imaginative, goddess of Scadrial? Like, I'm incredibly stoked about this matchup.
Next, we have Eshenai versus Shalon.
Very, very interesting matchup. The kind of same things that we saw in some of our other matchup with a plated individual versus a non-plated individual. Shalon obviously having lots and lots of radiant powers, though. We'll see how that one plays out. Our next matchup, Wax versus Renarin.
Ooh,
very
interesting.
Fascinating. I like that one a lot. Now we have the all-offensive character of Wax versus the all-defensive character of Renarin. We'll see how that one plays out. And a fight that I wasn't sure was going to happen.
Oh, no.
But here it is. It's Kaladin versus Dalinar.
Oh, shoot.
As you imagine them at their best, who wins Kaladin versus Dalinar? That's a tough battle, tough matchup. Our next battles we mentioned in last week's podcast, but this is the actual round for them now. So
yeah, they had a bye the first week.
Correct.
So here they are. First one is Marasi versus Vasher.
Marasi coming to the table with, in my opinion, her best. Had her with pistols and a cube device where she could imprint her power. So keep that in mind too. Like that final time when they suit up and go to fight in Bands of Mourning, they definitely had the cube technology. So play with that in your comments and keep that in mind in this fight with the ultimate sword master in Vasher.
Next up is Hoyd versus Miles 100 Lives. Good fight.
That is going to, for me, be the most interesting fight. Two people who basically cannot die fighting against each other. We'll see how it goes. Fans, get creative with that one, obviously. Like, go full bore with the theories, go crazy, go hog wild. I want to see all the crazy
feel free
to
think creatively.
Be imaginative on all these fights, because when you bring in Hoyd to a Cosmere fight, like, the point is to get creative and have fun with it.
Next up, we have Wrathen versus Spook.
I'm incredibly interested to see what the people say about this one. We have the Elantrian monk, fighting monk in Wrathen, who has twisted his bones to give him increased strength.
Well, he only has a little bit of that, right?
He doesn't do it across his entire body like some of the Dakur monks do.
Yeah.
But he did train with the Dakur monks, and I believe it is one arm is twisted to the point where he can quite easily snap a person's neck just by putting pressure on it with his arm.
So we have another Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldiers versus the tin enhanced... A lot of his
single arm fighters.
Tin enhanced Spook with a pewter spike, if you believe that is his most powerful.
Yeah.
And our final matchup, the one that I am... These characters are like the most humorous to me. One, because he is on purpose humorous all the time, and one because he is the opposite of humorous and just gets to play with Nightblood, and that is Wayne versus Zeth.
Yeah, I don't think Zeth is particularly humorous.
Oh, Zeth is hilarious. I find Zeth to be the funniest character in the Cosmere.
Very interesting sense of humor.
Yes, me and Sword Nimi have hilarious senses of humor. Well,
we should stipulate though, Zeth does not have Nightblood in this
very
fight.
Very true. Sorry, I'm just talking for fun's sake. But yes, I believe that Zeth, without Nightblood, but still as a full Night Radiant, is where I would put him. Against Wayne, the abilities and the combinations of Wayne as a Twinborn are very, very interesting. He does not have guns like Wax does have his sticks, okay? But he's able to speed bubble, and obviously he is a blood maker, so he can heal quite a bit, even from shard wounds. Some people were commenting about this fight and other fights that gold mines cannot heal shard wounds, but we found a word of Brandon that says absolutely gold mines can heal shard wounds. So keep that in mind. Wayne, not infinitely, obviously no like decapitation, but a single stab with a shard blade to Wayne, he can probably heal that, just as we're talking about it.
What I would really love to see is a fight between Wayne and Lift. That would be a humorous fight. And they would both have sticks, and Wendell would just be like, ow, 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 ow. And I really wonder if Wayne's speed bubble would be able to catch Lift, or if she would have some kind of game breaker ability to like get out of it.
Well, certainly it would be hard because his speed bubbles are immobile and Lift is incredibly mobile. So I can't imagine the speed bubble working for very long on Lift despite any game breaker ability that she might have.
Anyway, that was just my random
Maybe we should have a loser's bracket where if Wayne eventually loses, he can go down and fight Lift in the fun, no holds bar bracket.
Or you can just leave us a comment on Facebook, just post on our Facebook page or Reddit, tweet at us, and just let us know what fight you would have the most fun with.
For right now, round 2 is live. The Google Forms are ready to go. We've laid out the 8 fights. You can vote on them. You can comment on them. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere at Cosmere Convo.
Until next time, life before death.
Strength before weakness.
Journey before destination.